My father told me we were pure Punjabi. My DNA test said I was part Iranian, part Central Asian, part, wait, Balkan? How is that even possible? We think we know who we are, our stories, our faith, our ancestors. But sometimes DNA whispers something different, something older, deeper, inconvenient. For generations, the Sikh identity has been shaped by scripture, memory, and migration, a powerful spiritual force forged in the fires of resistance and unity. But beneath the sacred symbols lies something silent, a biological history written not in books, but in blood. Scientists began to look where no historian had, inside the genome of the Punjabi people. They weren't looking for controversy, but what they found cracked the foundations of what we thought we knew. Because the Sikh genome isn't simple. It's not a straight line. It's a layered mosaic of ancient migrations, buried movements, invisible to the eye, mapped only through autosomal markers, YSTRs, and uniparental haplogroups. The code didn't speak of one beginning, but many. Not one tribe, but waves of people arriving, mixing, disappearing. A web of identities hidden beneath a single name. So the question isn't where did Sikhs come from? It's, which layer are you asking about? Faith gives us one answer. Biology gives us another. And when the two don't match, what do you trust? Some scientists called it one of the most admixed populations in South Asia. Others said it looked like a living corridor. Traces of the Middle East, Central Asia, ancient India, all in one body. A people formed not just by belief, but by movement. But that was just the beginning. Because when they zoomed in on the land itself, on Punjab, the DNA didn't just reveal complexity, it revealed motion. Massive, ancient, unrecorded. And suddenly, it wasn't just about the people, it was about the place. It's not just the people who hold secrets, it's the land beneath their feet. Punjab, fertile, ancient, contested. To many, it's a spiritual homeland, but to geneticists, it's a portal. Because this land, this small strip of soil between mountains and rivers, was never just still, it was a highway. For thousands of years, humans didn't just settle here. They moved through it. They came with horses from the steppe, with grains from Mesopotamia, with silk from Central Asia, and prayers from Persia, and they left something behind, every time. Not just language, not just trade, but DNA. The bones beneath Punjab carry the marks of these travelers, haplogroups that belong to Central Asian nomads, autosomal signals that echo ancient Iran, mitochondrial trails that stretch back into the deep heart of South Asia. We're taught to see borders, but the genome sees flow, and in Punjab, that flow never stopped. And that's where the story turns. Because when researchers looked closer, zoomed into the Sikhs themselves, they expected some unity, a clean pattern, a clear origin. But what they found was contradiction. Not just one genetic signature, not two, but a fusion of ancestries so complex it defied all simple labels. And in one particular community, the surprise was even bigger, because one group didn't just break the mold, it rewrote it. And that group was the Jats. They were supposed to be one people, same turbans, same prayers, same blood. But when the data came in, it told a different story. Not of unity, but of fusion. The Jat Sikhs, seen by many as a core of the Sikh community, weren't a genetic island. They were a mosaic. When scientists ran autosomal analyses comparing thousands of genetic markers, they expected a neat cluster, one group, one pattern. What they found was overlap. Jat Sikhs didn't group with just themselves. They clustered with Brahmins, with Ramdasayas, with Mazbi Sikhs, with people from castes and backgrounds that history claimed were different. It wasn't noise, it wasn't error, it was real. A tangled web of ancestry that refused to fit any clean label. This wasn't just science, it was identity, under a microscope. Because for a community that sees itself as distinct, proud, unified, the genome whispered something else. You're not a single thread, you're many. The Jats weren't just warriors or farmers. Their blood carried stories far beyond the Punjab, echoes of mixing, migrations, and forgotten ties. And suddenly the question changed, from who are we, to how many of us are we? But if the overall DNA was this complex, what about the deep roots, the paternal lines? The genetic story told from father to son, generation after generation. If the surface was woven with many threads, what secrets were buried in the Y chromosome? That's where things get ancient. And the trail leads somewhere unexpected, back to the steppes. You carry your father's name, but in your cells, you carry his ancestors' footsteps. And in the case of many Sikh men, those footsteps stretch far beyond India, far beyond Punjab. They lead to the Bronze Age. Y chromosome analysis focused only on the male line, uncovered a familiar signature, R1a, a haplogroup found across northern India, but also in Eastern Europe, in Central Asia, and deep in the Eurasian steppe. This wasn't a coincidence. This was legacy. Ra1a doesn't trace back to temples or kingdoms, it traces back to riders, nomads, herders, who once thundered across grasslands on horseback. The people archaeologists now call the steppe pastoralists. And they didn't just pass through. They left something behind: language, culture, and yes, their DNA. But here's the twist. These paternal signals aren't limited to Sikhs. The same R1 variants appear in Brahmins, in Rajputs, even in certain Muslim and Hindu communities scattered across the subcontinent. Religion, caste, identity. These lines were drawn much later. The DNA? It doesn't care. It flows across boundaries, across centuries, and it links people who would never see themselves as connected. So what does that mean for the idea of a distinct, inherited identity? If your father's line came from horseback nomads, what about your mother? Because the maternal line tells a story even older, and surprisingly, more rooted. Not all stories begin with warriors or kings. Some begin in silence, in kitchens, in childbirth, in survival. The maternal line passed from mother to child, generation after generation, isn't loud. It doesn't change with conquest. It stays. And when scientists isolated the mtDNA of Punjabi populations, they found something unshakable. While paternal lines showed waves of migration, chaos, and incoming bloodlines, the maternal story was still haplogroups tied to South Asia, deep roots, some lineages going back over 30,000 years, before temples, before caste, before religion even had a name. These were the women who stayed, through climate collapse, drought, empire, and invasion. They held on. Their genes didn't ride in from Persia or gallop down from the steppe. They were already here, planting, birthing, singing lullabies in languages we no longer speak. This wasn't a story of mixing. It was a story of continuity, and that contrast is everything. The fathers moved, the mothers remained. Two different rhythms etched into one body. And now a question rises. If the male line shows motion and the female line shows stillness, then what happens when you blend them? What does the full genome, the total ancestral picture, say about who we really are? Because the answer isn't unity, it's complexity. In the end, no one bloodline wins. Because the truth inside Punjabi DNA is everything. Its contradiction, its convergence, autosomal studies, scanning all chromosomes, not just maternal or paternal, paint a picture even deeper. And the results? They're wild. Punjabi genomes carry signals from ancient indigenous South Asians. Yes, but also from West Asia, from Central Asian lineages, and from the Bronze Age steppe. This wasn't a blend that happened overnight. It was generations of encounter, empires rising and falling, borders redrawn, identities built, not inherited. What it shows is that the idea of a single origin story, one faith, one ethnicity, one blood, it's a myth. Religion may unify people, but DNA remembers the path they took to get there. Sikh identity, so powerful, so distinct, didn't emerge from a single ancient tribe. It was born from experience, from philosophy, from resistance, and that makes it no less real. In fact, it makes it more profound, because when you carry 10,000 years of history in your genome, you don't belong to just one place. You belong to all the places that shaped you. And yet, most people never see that. They trust the mirror, not the molecule, until they spit into a tube, click a button, and open a window. Because now, it's not just scientists discovering this. It's regular people. Sikhs, Punjabis, curious souls taking commercial DNA tests, and uncovering surprises they never expected. It starts with curiosity. One click, one kit. A little saliva sent off to a lab thousands of miles away. Weeks later, a report lands in the inbox. Percentages, maps, colors, and then the confusion. Because for many Punjabi and Sikh individuals, those results don't say what they expected. They say, "You're not just Punjabi, you're part Central Asian, part West Eurasian, sometimes even Balkan." Some reports show 90% South Asian, others dip lower, 75%, 60%, even less. One user stared at the screen. "Why does it say Iranian ancestry?" Another found faint matches in Eastern Europe and asked, "How?" The emotions come fast. Pride, for the depth of South Asian roots. Then surprise. Then doubt. What happened to the simple narrative? Modern DNA tests don't lie. But they also don't explain. Because they're not telling you who you are. They're showing where your DNA has been. Thousands of years back. Into populations. Not people. Into migrations. Not myths. They reveal echoes, fragments of history written into the body. Not family trees, not castes, not religion, but movement. That's what most people miss. These tests don't confirm stories. They deconstruct them. And that's where it gets uncomfortable. Because we want clean answers. We want 100% labels. We want to believe in ancestral purity. But when the genome answers back, it doesn't care what we want to believe. It only tells what was. And what it tells us next breaks one of the biggest myths ever told. Purity sells well. It's chanted in politics, written into caste systems, etched into religious pride. But genetically, it's a fantasy. Real population studies of Punjab, ancient to modern, show a clear, unbroken truth. People moved, people mixed, and nobody stayed genetically pure. Even the most closed communities, ones that claimed isolation for centuries, carry signals of gene flow. Subtle, quiet, persistent, from neighbors, from strangers, from history. You can draw walls, you can write laws, but you can't erase the traces left behind in chromosomes. The Punjabi genome, especially among Sikhs, reflects this perfectly. Yes, there's continuity, but alongside it, Eurasian haplogroups, West Asian links, steppe ancestry, all within the same bodies that chant sacred hymns today. It doesn't reduce the identity, it expands it. And yet, here lies the tension. What does purity mean? When your blood carries a chorus of forgotten strangers, do you hide it? Do you deny it? Or do you accept that ancestry is not a weapon? It's a mirror that shows how human you really are, and how connected you've always been. But this realization leads us to something even more profound. Not just where we came from, but how we define who we are. Because the biggest question isn't scientific, it's personal. It's this. If identity isn't written in DNA, then what is it really made of? Is identity written in your DNA, or does it live in the stories we tell? Because after all the charts, the haplogroups, the ancient migrations, we're still left with a question no genome can answer. What makes you, you? Genetics gives you roots, but identity, that comes from something else. From the songs you grew up hearing, from the way your parents said your name, from the rituals, the colors, the language stitched into memory. A genome may tell you your ancestors rode horses across the steppe, but it doesn't know what it meant the first time you walked into a gurdwara, or how it feels to tie a turban in the morning, or why a line from Guru Granth Sahib brings you to tears. Sikh scholars say it best. Our history is written not just in blood, but in belief. A geneticist once said, DNA tells you where your body came from, not where your soul lives. These aren't contradictions. They're two sides of the same truth. Genetics doesn't erase your heritage. It deepens it. It shows that being Sikh, being Punjabi, isn't just about origin. It's about transformation, about choices made across centuries, spiritual courage passed forward. Despite the chaos of ancestry, you are not a single thread. You are a tapestry, woven from migrations and meaning, from history and heart, and yet, there's one more question. Because if your ancestry is this complex, what about the rest of South Asia? What migrations shape their stories? What unknown bridges connect us all? There's a deeper layer, one that scientists are only beginning to uncover. Every genome is a time machine. But the South Asian map? It's still full of blank spaces. Questions that haven't been answered. Because they haven't even been asked. Where did the earliest South Asian settlers really come from? What routes did they take? Who mingled with whom before language, before caste, before any border was drawn? Genomic research is just beginning to trace those arcs. From ancient Harappans whose DNA is only now being pieced together, to tribal communities with roots deeper than empire. Each year, new datasets crack open the past. Skulls from the Indus Valley, mitochondrial trails winding into the Himalayas, step signals in unexpected corners of Tamil Nadu, echoes of forgotten migrations rising from desert graves, and every time we think the story is over, the genome adds another chapter. Because DNA doesn't give you a final answer, it gives you more questions, bigger ones. Is identity inherited or chosen? Is belonging about blood or belief? And when everything you thought was pure turns out to be shared. What does that mean for the way we see each other? This isn't just about the Sikh genome anymore. It's about all of us. Coming next, how South Asia's tangled, shared ancient DNA didn't just shape nations, it changed the world.